And I see a green square. That usually means we're live, but as always, audience, if you're listening, please let us know if you can hear me at least. We'll get to Robert in a second, but I'd like to know if you at least can hear me so far. Um, all right, on time. Yeah, on time. It's almost like I was already here waiting. Actually, a little bit after 3:15, so like 3:15 and 40 seconds. They can hear me? All right. Robert, say something interesting or not interesting so they can just do a voice test.
Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me?
There is a 30-second delay, so it's always the
Oh,
waiting
30
thing.
second. Okay, I didn't
Yeah,
know. I knew there was a delay. Didn't know it was that
yeah,
long.
it's usually 30 seconds. So, all right, they're saying hey, hey, hey. So they heard. Okay,
All
hear
right.
both. Thank you, Dark Angel. I like it when they actually confirm. Loud and clear. Good, excellent. And now, Robert, my question to you: do you see chat moving on the side?
Yes, it's scrolling and
Yes!
everything, just like a
Yay!
real live stream.
Yeah. Okay, folks, we can't let Robert know this is actually not. We're not live. None of us are live right now. This is all an illusion. It's wizards who do illusions, right? Sometimes sorcerer and wizard powers get mixed up in my head. So, yes. Hi, everybody. All right, I think we can officially start now that we've done the sound check. For those of you who don't know me, I am Julia Ornitocris, the community manager for Neverwinter. And I am very happy to have the guest I have today because it is someone I respect and admire. He's extremely talented, and he used to be on the Neverwinter team when I first started. Left us for a little bit and then came back. But yes, I will. Some of you might be familiar with him, but I'm going to let Robert explain who he is and why he's here. Hi, Robert. Who are you?
Hi, I'm Robert Gutschera, and yeah, I work on Neverwinter. I am currently the lead systems designer. I came to Crypt. Well, going way back, I used to be a math professor. Then I worked at Wizards of the Coast for many years. And I wound up at Cryptic to work on a game that never shipped, but wound up being on Neverwinter after that game proceeded to not ship. And I was on Neverwinter for a while, was the lead systems designer way back in the day, and here I am again.
And for people saying that it's obvious you worked on Wizards because look at your books behind you, but no, I think those are all probably math books, I'm guessing.
I have many books, but I think the shelf right behind me is sort of half math and half computer stuff.
Yeah. If it's anything like my father, who's a physicist, theoretical physicist, the bookshelves tend to include a mixture of things that when you open them, if you're me, you feel not so smart for a little bit. um, but yes,
There's other stuff though. There's like old England. There's like a copy of Middlemarch on the top shelf for no really good reason, and
cool. Well, hey, there's books. There's always a good reason to have books. They're
yeah,
books.
can't have too many books. Or if you
Exactly.
can, I haven't hit the limit yet. At least that's how I feel.
So you really are a wizard, I guess. But yes, so I know that at the beginning of this year, when we had one of the first streams at the beginning of the year, we talked about having a stream per class. We did a poll, and you all wanted to have one stream per each class. And when I started looking at the logistics of that, it was also the time when Robert was coming back onto the team, and I know we started doing some bard fixes and stuff, and there was no elegant way to plan out a stream per class, especially knowing when, we couldn't promise you that we were going to have a stream on a class and then 3 months later you'd have those changes or things we discussed because that's just not how development works in sync. But classes I know is a super important area. So I definitely wanted to jump on this chance, knowing that, Robert had done work on the Bard and we were looking at doing work on other classes. And also, bring Robert back into streamings. Have him get to know you folks. Don't scare him away, please, because I like having guests. And Robert, don't you scare the folks.
What?
Um, hey, we've talked spreadsheets. So actually, and some people are very excited about that. So yeah, I figured it was a good time to have one of these. I know we have another module coming out, or we have a new module coming out next week, but it's always good to look ahead into what could happen after the module that comes out next week. But I want to start out just kind of quickly to give you a little bit of background. So some people may be wondering, okay, well, why is Robert equipped to handle classes? Other than the fact that he's very smart.
Short
Uh,
straw.
yeah, and so kind of I wanted to start out by asking like how did you end up working on Bard? Like, what did you do? What was your approach when they said, "Hey, Robert, Bards need love"? Like, how did you approach that?
Yeah, so classes obviously they're all in different situations, and so the first thing I did, I was coming back to the team after a few years away, and so I figured, well, let me just I need to play some more of the game anyway. I grabbed a bard, went 1 through 20, just to kind of get a little bit of the feel. Um, but spent a fair amount of time polling various people in the company and looking at forums and getting a general sense of where the bard was at. And it felt like with the bard, the biggest problem was just it was super buggy, and the bard wasn't performant, but it didn't look like it was just out of balance, which sometimes it just the numbers need to be higher. It looked like the reason the bard was out of balance could be just because it had so many bugs that was impacting it. Now, of course, bugs can go either way. Sometimes a bug can make a class too powerful. But in the bard's case, basically the bard was being promised lots of things in its powers, in its power tooltips, that it wasn't actually getting. And there were enough of those, and they were bad enough that I felt like, well, you can't really turn the knobs and try and get the numbers higher if a bunch of stuff just isn't working. And so my focus really became, all right, let's find the bugs and fix them. There were enough bugs that it was not possible for one person to fix them all, unfortunately. But I fixed as many as I could. And I especially tried to focus on bugs that were really affecting the power level of the class. Of the two Paragon paths, the healing class seemed to be in the worst shape. But with the initial round of bug fixes, it was kind of mix and match. But just the healing bugs were worse. And so the first step was just to go in and sort of fix what I could, fix the things we already knew about, and then get those changes onto preview as fast as possible. And then for those of you who were involved in that, you kind of know a bit about how that went. I went onto the preview forum and said, hey, I think the bard is super buggy. I fixed these things. What else needs to happen? And started getting a lot of feedback. And so that feedback included a lot of bugs, a lot of additional bugs. We fixed a bunch of those. In the end, I would say we probably fixed something like 60-70% of the known bugs, like more than half, but nothing like all, unfortunately. I would have loved to fix them all. But I think we hit most of the ones that were really damaging. So just to take one example, there was one where if you were in the healing path, you were supposed to get double value from a certain healing spell, and now the names are already, they come and go for me. But for one of the standard bard healing songs, you were supposed to get double value on the healing path, and you just weren't. You just got the same as if you'd been a Songblade. And so obviously, like that, getting half value from what you're supposed to is going to pretty dramatically affect you. So when all those things got fixed, or at least the big ones, right, the ones that were really impacting power level, or that were just painful. Then at that point, it was kind of open up to some basic quality of life stuff. I didn't have a lot of art time, so it wasn't like I could do a new power or something like that. And that's, in general, that is out of scope for most of what we're doing with these class revamps. We just, the resources, art tends to take a lot more time, and we're particularly tight right now. So, but that was fine because most of the things that needed to happen were not primarily art related. There were one or two things that were art related that really needed to get fixed, and that was called out by the people on the thread. The biggest one, there was one bug where it was just like, every so often you ruin the raid because the boss drops a bomb on you and you can't see it because the VFX went away because reasons. And so that was very bad. And that one just went right to the top of the list. It was actually a bit of a pain to fix because where it was happening was kind of buried. But once we found it, it was an easy fix. And then there were a couple of quality of life things I said that bubbled up to the top. There was a system that kind of was trying to calculate how quickly you were playing songs and not let you play literally inhumanly fast, to kind of throttle people who were macroing. And it wasn't set very well. And it had both a bug in it and also just the timings were off. And it was people who were just playing normally and, pressing their bard buttons and playing their songs would bump into this thing that said, you can't do that now. And there was kind of no good reason for it. So that thing got pretty dramatically revamped. And then let's see. Oh, the other big quality of life thing was bards were almost all their healing was party only. I'm still not sure if that might have just been a mistake. When I looked at how it was built, it looked like maybe that wasn't what the person had intended to do, but that's how they built it. And people are like, well, clerics can heal other nearby non-party members. Shouldn't bards be able to do that? That wasn't technically a bug, but it felt like a reasonable fix to make to improve the quality of the bard's life. So that was sort of the big picture with the bard. With the bard, it was look at the problems, see that the focus needed to be on bugs, but power level was an issue, so bugs that hurt the power level were especially high priority. Go on to the forums, find out what else is concerning people, add in some more bug fixes, a few quality of life things, and hopefully overall, I think the bard is in a better place. I did not do everything I wanted to do. I think the bard players, the minstrel players got a huge bump up. The songblade players definitely got a bump up, but maybe not quite as large as they should have. So overall, though, I felt like it was an improvement. It seemed like most of the people on the forum thread felt like the bard was in a better place, and that's what I want out of a class revamp. Perfection is not achievable, but if you're gonna do it at all, you at least want better.
Yeah, I think reducing the amount of class, people throwing out class names during a stream is how I usually gauge how things have gone out. But yeah. Do I have a guest who wants to say hello? Do you want to say hello real quick? Yeah. Okay. You might have to stand in front here, right, so they can see you. You're kind of blurry right now. All right. So my daughter's home for summer break, and she found out that I was going to be on a stream, and so she wanted to say hello as usual. So can you say hello and then head out back to your room so I can do the stream?
Bye.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sweetie. All right. She's missed you all. So I did want to clarify there was some stuff on the chat about asking about a future class. That is, even though this is a class stream, we're not talking about any future classes right now. Let's focus on the ones we have right now, getting them to a better place. But I did want to hit some questions that are coming in, as I expected them to come in. And let's see. Let's see. So just to throw it in, there's a clear gap between Warlock and Rogue and rest of classes in terms of DPS output in AoE situations, solo or in party. Is there a chance for adding a unique way for each class to get combat advantage by themselves in AoE?
So right now we're kind of mostly focused on a class by class thing. I do think at some point it would be great to look at these things that kind of cross class boundaries. Like, does everybody have a reasonable AoE setup, or do classes that don't have a DPS path, paladin, do they have just a way to play the game without crying? Is aggro clear across all the tank classes, right? So or healing, right? So those are things I would like to do. At the moment, we've got a couple of classes that really feel like they need some love, and so that's going to be our priority for now. So in general, when we're focused on a specific class, we don't do a lot with the other classes, right? So, the next class up is Wizard. While I'm working on Wizard, I'm not going to be making a bunch of changes to Rogue or to Warlock or to other things. If we come up with things that seem worth doing, we can put them in the backlog. We can talk about doing them for later. But again, it's a matter of resources. We're kind of in a state right now where we have the resources to do one class revamp per module, roughly. And that could change, right? If we got some extra resources, because at this module we really want to do 2 classes. That's probably not going to happen, but it's not impossible. It could also happen. This module is so cool and so special that we're going to skip the class revamp to support its coolness and specialness. I would not want to do that unless the module really truly was cool and special. Not just, we could save ourselves a little work by not doing the class revamp this time. That would not be cool. But all kinds of things could happen. We're a small team. Somebody could just leave, and it take us 3 months to replace them, and then we'd be like, oh my god, we don't have time, we don't have resources.
Mm-hmm.
But the goal is, at the moment, we're hoping to do a class revamp every module. And so far we're on track. We've done the bard, and we have the wizard time budgeted. So if a disaster doesn't happen, the wizard revamp should happen.
Mm-hmm.
You never know till it actually is on the schedule. So I there are different levels of promises, and on a stream I don't want to promise anything, because
Yeah, that is the number one
we
rule
all
is you
know
don't
how this
promise.
doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
But the bard, unless something really terrible happens and all the servers burn down, like, all the bard fixes should come in. Most of them are already through, actually, because we did them. Well, I won't get into the complication, but most of them are already in game.
Yeah.
The wizard fixes will not come in with the module that's coming out, right? Just to be clear.
Yep.
The wizard fixes would come with the next module that we are releasing in several months.
Yeah, sometime in the future.
I won't even attempt to give a date. In the future, not with the module that is going to be dropping soon. Yeah, and then, but that time, as I said, it is on the schedule. It is budgeted. Something could happen to it if disaster strikes. But in general, when a thing hits the schedule, it is likely to happen, but not certain. And then after that, it's all a gleam in people's eye, right? Fortunately, one of the people in whose eyes it a gleam is Brett, and he has a lot of influence over the schedule.
This is Brett
and me. I have some influence over the schedule. Mm-hmm. So there are people who care about this, who are going to be trying to make it happen. So I think the odds are good. But again, all I can say is that's what our plan is for now.
So Spartan actually asks a very good question, and it makes logical sense, which is, how is this a class update stream, yet we're getting no info on class updates besides Wizard is up next? So that's the critical thing. Doing one stream to discuss every single change for every class is as unfeasible as trying to do a stream for every class. So I wanted to kind of get folks aware of what our approach to class changes, which is taking one at a time, seeing which one we feel or the community has told us needs some more attention. And in this case, this next one coming up is Wizard. And then after that, we'll move on, that's actually a question that Annie had sent me earlier, so I'll get to that in a second. But this is an introduction to how is our approach to classes at this time, how we're looking at different class changes. This was not a stream to try to cover every single question for every single class, because that's just not possible. But it's a valid question, and I'm sorry for those who are disappointed, who expected everything. But yes, I wanted to kind of rip off the Band-Aid to tell people that this is our approach to classes. We're not going to do all of them at the same time. We're not going to pull a class out of a hat. We're actually going to try to do a combination of what are our metrics telling us in terms of class performance, and what is the community telling us, and as well also look at what exactly does a class need. Robert had mentioned how Bards was a lot of bug fixing. But I want to head over onto Wizards because someone did ask, what are the changes coming to Wizards? Because Wizards are in a different situation in terms of how we're going to approach the work to them. It's not as much bugs, but other things. And just for full disclosure, for those wondering, I am the producer on the Wizard class rework stuff. So I kind of bounce a little bit in between the schedule and knowledge of that. So it is also a bit closer to my heart and wanting to make it a good feature or a good work on that. But yes, Robert, what is different about how we're looking at Wizard? How does it differ from Bards? And what are you looking to do for Bards, if you can kind of give us a general sense? I know that there's still a lot of time left before those changes come, live, but kind of what general idea do you have in mind for Wizards?
Well, right now we're in the research phase, learning about what's going on. There certainly are bugs with the Wizard, and hopefully we can fix a bunch of those. My hope is that there aren't as many and they aren't as complex. The Bard is, in addition to it having been very buggy, it is also technically a very complex class, which is probably part of the reason it was so buggy. The Wizard is a little bit simpler, like it doesn't have the whole song system, for example. So I'm hoping both to find fewer bugs than there were with Bard, and maybe not as severe, and maybe some of them are easier to fix. So my dream is that we can get a higher percentage of those bugs fixed. But Maybe not, because I don't think the focus should be on bugs with the wizard. With the wizard, from what I could tell, the problem has more to do with tuning. Um, First of all, the two Paragon paths are very clearly not balanced. The Arcanist is a lot stronger than the Thaumaturge. Um, so part of that will just be bringing up those numbers. I have some ideas about how to do that. It'll be a combination of looking at the data that we have internally and working with the community. But my hope for the wizard is to fix a modest amount of bugs, and then to really think harder. And this was not something that happened with the bard. To think more about just the raw numbers. Like every power in it has a magnitude. You guys could see it in the UI. The magnitude you see in the UI is technically a little bit different from the magnitude in our engine, because reasons. But basically, conceptually, it's pretty similar, right? If I double the magnitude number in our engine, the power will do twice as much damage. So one way to fix the wizard is just go in and find all those numbers that say how much damage it does and increase them. That's not what people tend to look to first. I know people say, "Oh, this power is bad because of these timings." But honestly, if a class is feeling weak overall, sometimes the right answer is make the numbers bigger. Sometimes it isn't, right? With the Bard, I looked at it and I didn't think the answer was just go in and make a bunch of numbers bigger. Nothing is worse, by the way, than jumping in and making a bunch of numbers bigger in the presence of bugs, because someday you'll fix the bugs and then the class will be all screwed up at that point. You'll probably have to nerf it, or it'll be unpleasant. So if the class is super buggy, you have to fix that first, which is why we took the track we did on the Bard. As we look at the wizard, mostly me, but this time around I do get a little bit of extra design help, so that is awesome. Another person on the team will also be doing a bit of wizard stuff. But as we look at that, assuming we don't see bugs that really look like they're the cause of the power imbalances, the next step, I think, is to start looking at the damage the wizard, and especially the Thaumaturge, is doing. An interesting thing that I've noticed with the first batch of data, and we're going to get some more data in with the launch of the new module, but at the first batch of data, the Arcanist is not that far below the other classes. I know Wizard has a reputation of, oh my god, it's so far below. That's not what we're seeing in the numbers. If people who have done, more numerical analysis have more details to give us, obviously we have to go by a combination of different kinds of information. The community tells us stuff. We look at stuff numerically. There's all kinds of different things. I'm still trying to understand what is causing the difference between what the community sees, or the sort of general feel of, oh, wizards aren't so good, but you occasionally see the person who pipes up, oh, they're fine, you just have to know how to play. And then, I look at the data and I'm like, oh, the Arcanists are kind of doing okay. The Thaumaturge clearly is way below. Both people in general community sentiment, and we see the exact same thing in the actual numbers. So that one is clear. With the Arcanist, I'm not seeing them as so far apart from the other DPS classes. But I'm still open to. I want to understand that better, because I know that a lot of people in the community are saying different. But need to get a better sense of that. Sometimes people overreact to things sometimes, but usually my feeling is that the community as a whole kind of does know best. And so if the data says something different, I need to kind of bring those two pictures into sync. So that's a lot of what I'll be doing, is like comparing those different things. The basic pattern, I think, will look similar. I'll make as many fixes as I can, fix out and out bugs, especially ones that are affecting the power level. Maybe do initial balance of number tweaks, or I might have that wait for a later stage. I haven't decided on that. But at some point, I show up in the forums with, I've done this much. Everybody try it out. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you think should happen next. Mm-hmm. And then there'll be a period of something like a month or so when I have time allotted to it and can, actually just go to the forums, see what people say today, answer people's questions, make fixes, lather, rinse, repeat. And to me, that's the most useful part of this. I think I fixed some good Bard bugs like in the beginning, but I felt like the most useful part was when I was on that really almost daily cycle of read the forums, what's wrong, can I fix it? If I can't fix it, can I tell people why I can't fix it, and then they can explain to me what I could do instead, and just kind of keep doing that until hopefully we get to a place where all the really big things are fixed. There'll always be stragglers, unfortunately. We're a small studio, but I want to get to a place where everyone who plays a wizard, or almost everyone who plays a wizard, says, "Yeah, it's better. We didn't get everything, but we got the big things, and the wizard is in good shape now."
Yeah.
So that's kind of my goal. But it's early days for this. I know everybody would love the wizard to be better, like next week or even next month, and it's not going to happen. It's going to take a while to go through this process, unfortunately.
I did want to address something that's come up on the chat as like, why does the investigation phase take so long? What exactly are we investigating? And also the comment about there's lots of wizards threads in the forums, and that's true. And that's actually.
And I have looked at them.
Yeah, we have looked at them, and actually that's one of the things that initially when we found out we were going to work on wizards, I did, I combed through the forums and other channels as well, and past reports. I save every single Monday report that I send out. I save them. And Robert did the same thing. He was on the forums. He was also having to relearn who the people in the community were, who gave what kind of feedback, who played what class. So there's a lot of things. And then comes the part where we have to meet as a team internally. And there's terms, you might hear terms like pitch, GDD. GDD is the game design document where we have to look at capacity. How much is each thing going to take? And part of the research phase is finding out the exact detail of what we're going to need to address that feedback for the wizard, because is that feedback to address it going to need art time? Is it going to need effect time? Is it going to need systems time, content time? We have to account for that. That is why the research phase takes longer, because it's not just finding out what the players are saying. It's then going internally and doing, okay, this is what the players have told us. How can we translate that into work that needs to get done that we can get done within a certain amount of time, because development cycles only last a certain time. So yes, we don't want to discount the amount of information you folks have given us in the past. It's been incredible. It's great to be able to go back, but it's a little bit more it's deeper than just going through that. Plus, we also want to see, if things that were reported 2 years ago are still, valid feedback, or if things have shifted. So hopefully that kind of covers as to why the research phase takes a while. Go ahead, Robert, you're going to say something?
That brings up something that I would like to ask everyone. So when I was going through the forum threads, and Julia was, one thing I did not find that I have found in the past has been, this is the giant thread of all the known bugs. There were sort of, individual bugs here and there with the wizard, but there wasn't that exhaustive list. We got that for the Bard. There wasn't one originally, but when the Bard forum thread appeared with the class rework, someone it was either Dark Horse or RJC, I forget who, but one of the people in the community was like, here's everything. And it was a big old list, and it was super helpful. One thing I would love, if that list is floating around, if I was looking in the wrong place, or if someone has it on a spreadsheet but they haven't posted it to the forums or whatever, that would be super helpful, because that exhaustive list, I would love. One problem with the Bard is when I went with the first batch of fixes, it wasn't as big as it could have been, because I only could fix the things I knew about, and we didn't know about everything at that time. If I'd had the Super Bard list, actually it was so big, we probably still couldn't have fixed everything, but we could have come in with more of the fixes. And so if anyone knows of that list for the wizard, knows a good, up-to-date, more or less exhaustive wizard bug list, please, reach out to Julia and point us to that, because it would be great to go in with that. I'm a little scared to ask for it, but we should know how bad it is. I'm hoping it will be shorter than the Bard bug list. But the wizard has also been around longer, so who knows? But we should know, right? And we should look at the whole list and say, can we fix all of these? And if we can't fix all of them, we should say, which are the really important ones that will make people cry if we don't fix them? And then if I go in with those fixed, and then you say, how could you not have fixed like numbers 3 and 12? What were you thinking? And then, and then we're off to the races.
Nova, so if there's a thread that was created or updated, and it's gone, I can try looking for it. Sometimes threads are closed if discussions within the threads got too toxic. I'm sorry, I cannot leave a toxic thread open. I can go back and find it to see if I can look at where threads are moved when they're removed from public view. But yes, unfortunately, if a thread becomes toxic, I cannot let it live live. I can go. That's one place I have not gone and look at threads that were removed, so I'll go ahead and look at that. So thank you for reminding me of that. But there are reasons for why threads are removed, and that is usually either they get caught in the spam filter, or they have to be closed and removed because the conversation just became so toxic. And when it comes to classes, I mean, as we're seeing right now, well, we're already seeing people upset because we chose, one class is being chosen, or other players feel like their class should go next. So it's a personal topic. Your class is
no,
what
absolutely
yeah.
right. Like if your class is not in a good place, it hurts a lot, and something else gets. I mean, there were a lot of voices for Wizard for sure, but there were voices for other classes, and I've been trying to avoid actually like reading the thread. What are people saying the most? Is there a clear next favorite, or everybody's just naming their own class?
So there is one, and actually thank you. That's a good segue into. So first of all, shout out to Annie. She sent me a few questions, like 4 questions, to kind of to prepare for this topic, and that was, will the Paladin be next in line for changes after Wizard? Because on the chat there are a lot of people who are focused on Paladins, especially Oathbound.
So I cannot promise what the next one will be. We will not decide that until we are at least mostly done with the Wizard. As I said, it's 1 per module. So just the way our way things work, I feel foolish explaining this when you're on the stream, but I'll do it anyway.
That's okay.
We go in cycles of releases, as you guys know, the different modules, and there's a planning phase for a module, which we're just we're just wrapping up that planning phase for the next module. So the module that is about to land has been planned and completed and bug fixed and is coming out soon, right? Meanwhile, we are at a certain point we aren't allowed to change. So if I have this brilliant idea for what should happen for the module that's about to land, there are people who will punch me. Well, they can't because we're all virtual. But they would reach through the screen and punch me if they could, if I tried to change anything at this point, because we're so close that basically nobody's allowed to touch anything because computers do not touch.
Terramac or Mally will get very upset if you change anything for a build.
So those things can't be touched. So since we can't touch those things, we're busy planning for the next module. But what that means for classes is the next module after that is far away, right? Yep. We have not even started planning for that.
Well, maybe not you, but production.
Well, yeah. We're not planning it at the level of things like what class are we going to do next? The planning that we're doing, I'm actually thinking about a bunch of stuff for the module after that one, but that's a totally separate thing. What that means though is we don't know what the class after Wizard will be, and I don't think we should. Like, I don't think it would actually be good to say here's our list, here's what's next, because then like something would come up and we'd have to change, and then people would be sad. I will say that the Paladin has come up a lot. It is high on many people's list. If you put a gun to my head and said, what do you think the next class chosen will be? I would say probably it would be Paladin, but don't hold me to that because we have not decided. Yeah. I'm sure you'll all yell at me if it isn't Paladin. But Paladin is certainly on a lot of people's lists, and people are aware and that it needs some love. And so it will absolutely get considered. But something else could bubble up to the top, right? Some horrible thing could be realized about some other class. Something else could happen. Anything is possible. But I think when the next class is discussed, absolutely people will say, should it be Paladin? And then somebody will have to say, no, it shouldn't be Paladin, it should be this other class because here's why. So in that level, I feel like Paladin is a front runner, but it is absolutely, we have not chosen the class after Wizard, and we won't for quite a while. So just be aware of that. I don't know if I've said too much or too little, probably too much. But that's where we're at right now. And I'm just being honest with you. Like that really is where it is. We haven't chosen it, but lots of people are saying, "Hey, what about Paladin?" And
Yeah.
we hear that.
And yeah, I think everybody knows that nothing we say here is set in stone. Just because game development doesn't work that way, things change. But I actually have a question for you. Since we aren't, since we haven't chosen, like we don't have a list of this is the order we're going to do the classes in, which I think some people are wondering if that we don't have a set order. Would it make sense for people who play a certain class to now create that master thread right now, or let us know where that master thread lives that is being updated continuously on a certain class? Or is it something that for all other classes right now is not something you need right now? Would you rather just have one created or have one surfaced to you when we announce the class that we're working on next? Like what would be helpful
Yeah.
to you to kind of start planning?
It is. So as you guys are seeing, this stuff takes longer than it feels like it should, and I know I have that same feeling. Like, why does this take so long? And then when I'm actually doing it, I'm like, all right, there's this and there's this and there's this and there's this. Um, because it takes so long, I don't think anyone should like panic and think they should, go make a Paladin bug list in the next month. I mean, look, it's always great when people make bug lists, and it's always helpful to us. And it is always especially helpful when we have people who are really willing to like kind of stay on it, right? And have the bug list that they maintain, and then new people add, and there's like a bug thread, and it has everything on it, and the person who started the thread, like those are the best, right? And then those are great for us because anytime we could be like, oh, we have some time to handle this, and there's the thread, and it's up to date. So hats off to anyone who does that kind of work. It is super valuable for us. But it's not fair for us to say that that's like a thing you should do, right? I mean, ultimately, it is on us to do that. But I will say, I guess what I would say is, if you have a special love for a certain class, and you want to keep track, that is great. And then when we announce what that next class is, the people who've been keeping track would be like, bam, here it is, or I already have that thread. If someone were to make the perfect list for Paladin now, and then, it might be a little out of date. Well, if Paladin was, let's say though, for some crazy reason, we really had to do Warlock next, because reasons, or that seems really unlike, I don't know, fighter. If we decided we had to do that next, and then Paladin was like a module later, but then this terrible thing happened, had to be a module after that, right? Obviously, if someone had done a ton of work for Paladin right now, it would probably be out of date by that point. So I wouldn't want anyone to kill themselves making a bug list that we wouldn't necessarily look at right away. And again, that gets back to like the person who wants to build and maintain the list. That's obviously great, right? Because then at any moment we can come in and say, oh, look, you've got this thing and it's already up to date. But also, that's a lot of work, right? And I wouldn't want to ask anyone to do that. But if someone's doing it anyway, like I have this spreadsheet or whatever, if you could take a little bit of extra work and link to it on a forum or something and announce that you're maintaining it, if you are, right, then that's all, that is all gravy for us. Just be aware that we might not necessarily get to it for quite a while. So, don't feel bad about that. And if you're like, I know a lot about the Paladin bugs, but I'm going to wait until they announce it efficiently, totally fair.
Yep.
Right? Does that answer the question?
I mean, that answers my question in terms of how I can provide guidance to the community when they come to me and saying, hey, like we have all these issues we want to talk about. What do we do with them? Do we send them to you? Do we post them in the forum? So that at least provides me some direction, and hopefully it provides some clarification for players. But let's see. There were some other questions. I know that there's a lot of topics coming up and down. I'm trying to go into some semblance of order, but there's going to be a mix. And that is, so kind of going back to Wizards specifically, will the cooldowns be getting reduced on the Wizards as they are the longest cooldowns of all the classes? Like, is that a type of change you're looking at?
That's an interesting question. And so I've thought some about that. So I'm going to say something a little surprising, and then let me try and explain it. The answer is probably not. And here's the reason. In general, when a class is out of tune with other classes, I don't think the best design answer is to make it more samey. I think in the long run, that makes your game boring. So I don't want to be in a situation where what I do is make the wizard more like other classes. To me, part of the fantasy of the wizard, and I mean, I played wizards back in paper D&D more years ago than I would like to say, but many years ago, back in the day, before second edition, let's just say that, I had a white box without the little star on it that says this is the original edition.
Very nice.
So I still have it, actually. It's rather beat up. Oh, actually, wait. Let me go get it. I think I still have it.
Props.
Sorry, I can't resist. Nerd moment.
That's okay. Actually, during that time,
We're all nerds here, I hope.
During that time,
I think I know where it is.
I'm going to address a
If I'm
question.
wrong, I'll just give up and come back.
All right. There's a question about the legacy characters. It comes up by a lot of people, and we're not purposely trying to ignore it. It's just we're aware of it. It's when we first heard of it, we started doing some research, and concerned that how many people was this? And it's
Here it is.
Not, all right, hold on a second, Robert. I think this is a topic that,
Original white box there.
The legacy. It's okay. The legacy tunes. We're aware of it. But it's not like a huge widespread issue. But we are aware of it. We're looking at what the best approach to it is. People have gotten given certain suggestions and feedback. But we're working on it. I just don't have any more information on exactly what our approach is because we're still examining it. But it is not like a huge, not even like it's not a majority or even half. It's a small number of people who are impacted. So I want to address it. We're aware. We're working on it. I don't have any more information. So, yes. So, what did you find the
wizards?
Thing? Yes.
Yeah. So let me now that I've had my nerd moment. So let me talk more about the wizard. So to me, part of the fantasy of the wizard is he isn't like let's say a rogue or someone who's like doing a whole bunch of things, bam, 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 hit you with a bunch of things. He's like the big drop the bomb guy, right? Or gal, right? But like male or female wizard, huge explosion, big powerful things, right? Now, obviously, our game has a certain pacing, right? And the classic paper D&D wizard moves very slowly, and that wouldn't be appropriate for us. But I think it is fine if our wizard has a slower casting rate than other classes. I actually think it's good. If you want something that's faster, there are other classes for you to pick, right? And to me, that is the better way to go. And that's the wizard as it is now. I don't want to change the class identity. So what I want to do is say, oh, look, the wizard takes a long time to cast spells. The wizard casts spells at a slower rate. Whatever that is, we need to up the performance of those spells to match, right? And so if a wizard is doing as much DPS as a rogue, but is firing half as often, but the damage is the same, I think that's great, right? Now, some people might not like that, but I think some people do like that, right? And that is the class identity of the wizard now. So that's where I want to get to. I don't want to say, oh, rogues do more damage because they attack faster, so wizards should attack faster just like rogues. What I want to do is say, rogues do a lot of damage because they hit you often with smaller amounts. Well, if wizards are hitting you less often for smaller amounts, that's pretty terrible. Let's make wizards continue to hit you at that same rate they do, but for bigger amounts. That's and this is all just general direction. I'm not saying that I won't change any cooldown times. Maybe I will. Right? Maybe I'll increase some cooldown times, but increase the damage even more. Who knows, right? But that is my sort of philosophy of it. That's kind of what I would like to do. I would like to keep the identity of the wizard. I would like to keep the pacing and feel by and large the same, which doesn't mean that specific things can't get addressed. They absolutely can. But I'm not looking to make the wizard stronger by making him faster. I think there are other ways to make the wizard stronger that are more in keeping with kind of the identity of the wizard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I for one, I appreciate wanting to keep each class having their own flavor. I know that's a big part. Like we are still a D&D based game. We want to keep that identity. It might make some people unhappy. I did want to reassure for maybe I don't know if some people tuned in late, but they were asking about if we knew about the difference between the Arcanist and Thaumaturge performance. And yes, Robert mentioned that we definitely are aware that Thaumaturge needs extra love. It's definitely at a disadvantage compared to Arcanist. And there were some other questions, which is actually this was an interesting one. And switching topics slightly, which is Huston asked, they'd come back after being gone for a year, and they were surprised to see class quests gone. What happened? Those were fun. Wondering if they are planned to return. And I know that's an interesting, because that's content. Anything that's quests tend to be content, that it does impact the class. So, like Robert, would you like to see class quests coming back, or like, did you see a usefulness in them, or?
Yeah, I love those things. It is great to have them. I can't answer for content and why they were removed. I will say, as a general matter, they do tend to be very expensive, right? Because you're making something that only a relatively small percentage is in any particular class gets to see them. My guess is that I don't even want to guess. For some reason, they got removed, and I think they're hard to add back in because of the expense, because you have to make them for every single class.
Yeah.
But yeah, they are fun, and I have enjoyed them when I played them in our game and other games. So I appreciate it. But as a class person, it is easy for me to say, content, I would like a quest for each of my classes. Please do that. It is a lot harder for content to make all those things.
Yeah.
So
Nova asks what Nova is, wizards are dear to his heart. So no, what he's asking about wizards. What changes those that you're speaking of? Are we talking mechanics, encounters? Like, be specific. Please don't be broad. Before you answer, Robert, I do want to remind Nova that we're still in the research investigation phase. So we can't, I mean, Robert can if he disagrees with me, but I don't think he can right now tell you I'm going to do exactly this, because making a decision before you have the data in front of you probably isn't the best approach. But I did want to tack on, to the question Nova's thing is, Robert, when you do start implementing changes to wizards and stuff, is that something that players are going to be able to see on the preview server? They can maybe check them out and then give you feedback?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, the feedback is a big part of it, and I think with the bards, I would say 2/3 of the stuff that got done with the Bard happened after we went to preview, right? So I kind of went in there with a bunch of bug fixes that was as sort of a down payment. But that was, I think, only 1/3 of what actually happened with the Bard. I would say very roughly the Bard looked like this. It was 1/3 bug fixes of things I knew about that I did kind of advance, went to preview, and then an additional third, another bug fixes, about as many as I'd done before, and then another third of kind of quality of life and other more subtle changes that came up during that preview thread. And I expect the same thing to happen with the wizard. I'm sure there will be a bunch of feedback. It's that people think this is more scientific than it is. I may be revealing a little too much of the sausage making here, but there isn't some sort of secret knowledge base, or like I can't, there isn't an idol of wizard class adjustment that I can pray to 3 times and then I know everything there is to know about the wizard. You guys as a group know more about the wizard than I ever will, and that's just the reality. I have seen people go into I've seen this done before in this game and other games. I've seen people go into this kind of class balancing thing and spending a lot of time making big spreadsheets and kind of mathing it all out. My feeling is that hasn't always led to the best results, and in particular hasn't done as much good stuff for the players, sort of for the amount of time spent. So honestly, I mean, some things are just like, oh, this is a bug and it's bad and we clearly should fix it. Bam, right? That's not so hard conceptually. But a lot of it is just, well, all right, here are a bunch of things that are bad. Which ones do you hate the most? All right, let me work on that one first. All right, I fixed it. Oh, I didn't fix it. I made it worse. Oh, sorry. All right, let me try again, right? There is absolutely a lot of community involvement in it. And my impression is that the worst stuff does tend to bubble up, right? Like somebody will complain, I don't like X, and then like 6 people will be like, that's the worst, and then I know, right? Or somebody else will be like, I don't like Y, and I look at Y, I'm like, is that really such a big deal? And then nobody else mentions it, and then I'm like, well, I'll get to Y if I have time, but let me fix these other things that are bothering more people. And it's not just like number of votes, right? Like some people give really intelligent feedback and always seem on top of it, and identify important problems that maybe nobody mentioned it, but the moment they say it, I'm like, oh yeah, that would be really bad. Let me look. Oh, you're right, that is happening. Right? Like one thing that only got a little bit of a mention at first was that weird bug where the boss mechanic effects would be erased from your character. that's terrible, right? Like that can wipe a whole group if you're doing really hard, like a hard trial or something. Um, and that was at first there were just kind of rumors of it, but and then a couple of people like, no, it happens if you do this in this situation with this boss, then this thing happens. And so, people who have that level of information, over time, you see that and you're like, all right, this person knows a lot. They're on the ball. If they bring up some other topic, maybe I'll, be more likely to look at it. So it's a combination of like the number of people who say something and the people who over time tend to bring up the most important things. So all that goes into it. But yeah, I don't know right now all the things the wizard needs. I have some ideas. As I said, but the basic idea is pretty simple. Fix the worst bugs. Go to the forums, ask for more information. And the one thing that's different from the Bard is look more at just raising the raw magnitudes, right? Just if things aren't doing enough damage after the bug fixes, right? Like if a power is doing 50% less damage than it should because of a bug, well, you fix that first because that's a big increase, right? But if there are a bunch of powers that don't seem buggy at all, but they're still terrible, well, maybe it's just time to make them do more damage, right? And I understand for some reason, people often don't find that satisfying. Like they want the solution to be more complicated. But this is a thing I learned in Magic. Sometimes the right answer is to change the core mechanic, but a lot of times it isn't. A lot of times just like make the number bigger. And I understand that doesn't sound like super, high powered. But if the right answer is make the number bigger, then you should make the number bigger. Because if you do something else, you'll probably just introduce some new bug, right? And again, this depends on what you're going for, right? With the wizard, what we're going for is balance, right? The big thing about the wizard that we're hearing is just like, we aren't up to par. We aren't doing the damage of the other DPS classes. If that's the big thing, then that's a balance issue. And if your big thing is a balance issue, you should change the numbers, right? I'm a big believer in this. People can talk me out of individual changes, but you will not talk me out of this general philosophy, because if what you're looking for is balance, you have to tune the numbers, because if you start changing other stuff, A, the results are much less predictable. B, it's very easy to introduce bugs. And C, if you don't land where you want to land, you don't know what to do next, right? Every time you change the functionality, well, now you have a new power on some level, right, conceptually. Whereas if you tune the number, right, like if the magnitude number is 200, and people are like, this is way low, and you crank it up to 300, and they still say it sucks, well, then you crank it up to 400, right? But if people say, oh, the problem is that it doesn't interact in this special complicated way with this other thing, and then you make it do that, but it's still not good enough, now what do, right? Like, it's much harder to get to that place that you want to be. Again, if your goal is balance. If your goal is something else, if you feel like, oh, the play feel isn't right, or the class identity is bad, or whatever, right? But again, with Wizards, what we're hearing the most often, especially with the Thaumaturge, is just not competitive.
Yep.
And so that's really going to be the focus for the Wizard. And the plan of attack is very basic. It's if the Wizard doesn't do enough damage, make it do more.
Yep. So there are a couple of different comments from two different people, which is, is this the only thing we're talking about today, Wizards? Is there any chance we'll address very specific questions, issues on different classes? So this was, I kind of talked about it briefly at the beginning of the stream, which is this stream today was to kind of introduce our approach to classes and how we're going to change them. And I didn't want to, for example, have a stream where we discussed a lot of, I don't know, sorry to pick on fighters again, fighter issues or bugs or feedback, but then us not planning on working on them for a while. So that is why this one's going to be heavy on the Wizards, because that's the next one on our docket. And for the next few months, when we do talk about classes, it'll probably be more focused on Wizards, because that's where our focus is in. Once we start looking, okay, we've done the Wizard work, we're going to move on to something else, then we'll shift on to the next class discussion. This isn't to say we're not going to accept feedback for the classes. The forums, there's lots of feedback threads. But for streams, it would be a disservice to you folks to go in depth about something that we're not going to touch for a while, just because we don't have the budget. And by the way, when we refer to budget, we mean time budget. That's time is what we budget for in game development.
Yeah.
So yes, this is heavy on wizards because that is our next goal. But it also hopefully is going to give you an idea of how we're looking at class work and class balance, class changes. And that is why we're also using the different terms, because each class has different needs. And we want to get kind of people in the mindset of what what we're going to be doing in the future. So you folks kind of tailor your feedback to us in that sense. It helps you refine your feedback and helps us give us some structure. So hopefully that addresses those comments. But there was another good question that people agreed that was a very good question. Erasir, sorry, I am sorry if I'm butchering your name. They ask, are you also looking into moving powers between Paragon paths? Is that a solution?
So let me just briefly address the other classes question, because I absolutely, it is very painful, right? If your class isn't the one being worked on and you don't know when it'll be worked on, and yeah, it just hurts, right? And I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for that. We can't work on everything at once. If we tried, it would just be terrible for everything. So we have to pick and choose, right? And do things one at a time. And as I said, right now we're doing one class at a time. You could also imagine a world where we tried to do a feature at a time, like we did like a big rework of the healing system as a whole, or whatever. Right now, though, with Bard and with Wizard, and with other classes, not to be mentioned, there was a feeling that they were far enough behind and there was enough pain there that it, at least for now, it made sense to go on a kind of class by class basis. And I'm sorry, if your class is in a painful place and it's not the wizard. It just there's no great answer for that, right? We only have so much bandwidth, and that the wizard is what we're working on now. I appreciate that it can be a pain. But there's really, there's no other answer other than we work on them one at a time and we do what we can do. Switching things between Paragon Path, that is a possibility. Again, it is not at the top of my list because, again, when you do stuff like that, you disrupt people's play patterns. You don't necessarily achieve a clear goal, right? Again, if you're trying to balance something, making swaps isn't always the best way to do it, because you think, oh, this swap was good because it made this interaction stronger. Oh, but this other interaction maybe got weaker, right? It's a lot harder to know what you're doing. If I say, wow, Thaumaturge is really weak, and I go through it and say, I'm just going to increase every magnitude on Thaumaturge by 30%. Right? I can just do that, and then Thaumaturge's damage will go up 30%. Like, that'll just happen, right? That is a lot more reliable. So again, I'm not saying it's off the table, and if there were a specific power that everyone's like, yeah, this would really fit much better in this other Paragon path, but again, that's the kind of change I'd have to feel like it was solving a very specific problem, and B, that an awful lot of people wanted to see it happen on both Paragon paths. Because remember, like, let's say it's a, quote, good power, and we're moving it to Thaumaturge because it needs help. Well, but then the Arcanists be like, you took away my good power. I'm sad now, right? It would be better to look at the Thaumaturge and say, well, which powers do they have that aren't so good? Let's make them better. And again, part of this gets back to making the class better for the people who want to play it, right? So for the Bard, for example, like you look at the Bard and you can say, gee, this class is pretty fiddly, playing all these songs. It's kind of complicated. Wouldn't it be easier if X or Y or Z? And I didn't want to change that because I'm like, the people who like Bard, this is what they signed up for. It shouldn't suck. It shouldn't be broken. It shouldn't have big bugs in it. If a minstrel can't heal as much as other healers, or a songblade can't do as much damage as other DPS classes, that needs to improve. Nobody signed up for low damage or low healing. But if people don't want a really fiddly class where they press a whole lot of buttons really fast, don't pick Bard. Like, it's, you don't have to play Bard for long to learn that that's what you're signing up for, right? And so again, with Wizard, I don't want to change how the class feels too much, and I don't want to try and So another thing that designers often like to do is like, I'm going to build this the way it should have been built in the first place. That is not my goal, right? My class is to make the existing wizard better, not to make what I think the wizard should be. It's much more about the wizard that people like now or would like if it weren't just super low damage. Or, if it were another class, it could be super low healing or survivability or whatever the issue is. But Wizard is a DPS class in both paths. It doesn't look like a Wizard tank or a Wizard healer would make a lot of sense. So the thing to do with the Wizard to make Wizards happy, I feel at this point, is mostly focused on getting the Wizard's DPS and especially the Thaumaturge's DPS up to where it needs to be. So that's a long-winded answer to say probably not, but it's not impossible. I could be convinced that a specific power really wanted to be in a specific other path, but my impulse right now is don't swap anything. If you think that this power would help this other path, well, give that path better performance in what it has.
I feel like I'm frozen on my end. Am I freezing for other folks on their end?
You're moving for me,
Okay.
and yeah.
Okay.
As far as I know, it's still going.
All right. So I'm gonna start a giveaway. Ooh, okay, so they can at least hear me. Okay. I'm actually gonna nix the giveaway because I think it was bringing up Moobot. Yeah, I'm gonna nix the giveaway. So I will try to find other ways to do the giveaway. Maybe through social media because yeah, I think that was causing some issues. So apologies for that, folks, but I'd rather get the stream going than, freeze it for giveaways. But I did want to bring a question into the fold. Let me just see if I can find the chat. Okay, it's working now. Yep, it was stalled when I brought up Moobot. So yeah, I'll work on that, see what's going on there. I'll try to do a giveaway some other time because, yes, we do have the Rainbow Panthers. And then hopefully some of the content creators have shared the new rainbow vanity pet they have on their end, which is the little pig, the cosmic pig. And then I will have another new little vanity pet next week after the release because it's on the next branch. But I wanted to give one final question, which was asked at the beginning and throughout, and I want to add it towards the end. And that is the band of air. Because as someone,
Oh my God, you're going to make everyone on the stream hate me.
You know what? Their reasoning, I'm going to give it to them. The reasoning was that the band of air does impact classes. So, do you want to talk about the band of air in any way whatsoever?
Not really, but I probably should.
We should, yeah.
We're aware the band of air is a problem. Just so people understand, it's a problem in two senses. Obviously, I think what players are focused on is the balance, and it is obviously, well, not obviously, right? Depends. Some people have a band of air, but depending on their build or whatever, maybe. But for a lot of people who have a band of air or who don't have a band of air and have a friend who does, they know it is super, super powerful. In general, and this is a thing that I want us to get better at. So up till now, I've been having my designer hat on and talking about the design work I am embarking under. But let me talk a little bit from the standpoint of being the systems lead. I want us as a systems group to get better at balancing our items. And I don't want to do that because of some abstract idea of balance. We're not, we're not an esport. We're not trying to, sort of put everyone on a perfectly even playing field. It's an MMO, and most people are not doing PvP. It is mostly PvE for us. But balance is still important, and the reason balance is important, there are a bunch of them, but one of the big ones is that part of the fun is you play the game and you get new gear, and if all of the new gear sucks compared to some broken thing that somebody made 3 modules ago that's kind of hard to get now anyway, but it's still the best, that's not a lot of fun, right? And so we don't want it to be like a total treadmill where we're obsoleting everything every time. That's not fun either. But in every module, there should at least be a few things that you're like, oh, I'd like that. That would be cool, right? And to do that, other things have to be kept in balance. So that's kind of the big picture of balance. I just want to let people understand that it is something that's important to us, and I want it to become more important to us, but also to understand that it's not important for some sort of abstract reason. We're not going to just go around nerfing things because we can. In particular, this was something that Wizards thought a lot about, and like, what is their balance policy? We shouldn't be balancing something just because it's strong. That's not a good enough reason. We should be balancing things because it completely destroys content, or because it's the absolutely only thing you can use and we can't make anything better than that. Those are reasons. Band of Air potentially does fit into that category. However, the Band of Air, in addition to being a balance issue, also is an issue in terms of just what it's doing on a server performance level, on a kind of technical level. It is a proc that can proc off of basically anything. Well, that's not good. Things need to proc off of specific other things. If a thing procs off of almost anything, then it starts procking off of other procs, which the Band of Air does. And things that proc off of other procs are just bad, right? I mean, it's not going to be good for performance. If you get a couple of them, you're going to get loops of procs, and it's basically just on the list of things that you really can't do. So the Band of Air has all kinds of issues. All right, so that's the background of the Band of Air. It has huge balance problems. It has issues just with underlying technical how it's built. On the other hand, it's a super important item to a lot of players who have worked hard to build it. So I actually quite a while ago was sent this, like, Robert, fix Band of Air, bam. And I haven't done it yet because I don't want to just slam in a fix that's really, I mean, I could just nerf it into the ground. That's pretty easy. But that's not fair to all the people who've worked hard to acquire it. So now we're in this difficult situation, right? Where we have to say, a bunch of people have worked hard to acquire this item. It's important to them. What can we do that makes it not be a problem for the game as a whole, but still makes it a good, strong item for the people who've acquired it? And that's really hard. Like, that's a hard point to hit. And I think we've seen this with the rib cage, right? With the rib cage, we got together as a group. This is something we didn't used to do and have now started doing, and I hope is part of what will get us to a better place with our item balance specifically. We got together as a group. We were looking at the new items, and one of the things that we said was, all right, for every new item, what's the current best in slot, and let's compare it. And it doesn't mean every item has to be better than the previous best in slot. That's a recipe for inflation. But we don't want a world where we make a new item, we ask players to chase it, it's like the end result of a huge series of quests and a really hard dungeon, and in the end it's so much worse than the current best in slot that there's no hope, right? That's ridiculous. So it needs to be comparable. We're like, we can't make anything comparable to Ribcage. Like, it's insane. It was triple like what it should have been. And then we're like, all right, what can we do? And in the end, the solution we came up with, and maybe this was the right call, maybe it was the wrong call, but it seemed reasonable, was compromise. We said, all right, the ribcage is basically 3 times as good as anything else. We're now going to make it double as good as anything else, but then that is our new kind of baseline. From now on, things in the chest slot are going to be kind of, the best things, not everything, but the best things that go in the chest slot will be twice as good as kind of they quote should be. But again, should doesn't mean anything. It's a game, right? As what we thought they should be, but we were wrong. So the rib cage goes down to that twice as good as anything else. New items are going to go up to that, and that was the kind of spot that we picked. So that's the kind of thing that we're going to try and do in the future. If something has to get nerfed, we're going to try and still keep it good if it's something players have been investing heavily in. I can't promise that'll happen every time, right? There'll be cases where something's just broken in half and, we got to do something. But in general, if a thing is overpowered, we're going to try and leave it strong. We're going to try and bring other things up to that level when we can. We'll try and kind of pick a good spot that kind of balances out these different goals. So that's kind of what we're looking for. And that's why the Band of Air is taking so long, right? The just, bam, Band of Air, take it, end of you, Band of Air. Like, we don't want to do that. The people who have a Band of Air will still hate me when the fix comes through. But hopefully, at least some of them can still choose to use Band of Air. People who don't have the Band of Air will hopefully feel like they at least get to play the game with people who do have the Band of Air and not cry so much. And in general, we want to try and get ourselves to a good place. Will we hit it dead on, like, arrow center of the target? I sure hope so. Probably not. Math is hard. but that's what we're aiming at. So I have been deliberately not looking at whatever's in the thread, but I've kind of said my piece there. So
Yeah.
yeah, the too long didn't listen version is we're aware of Band of Air. We will probably be doing something about it in the not too distant future, but we want to be careful about it because it is obviously divisive. Like the people who have it is like, no, it's fine. Well, no, it's not fine. But then the people who don't have it, oh, Band of Air, kill it, those people, make them suffer, and that's not a
Aw.
good answer either. And so we're gonna try and thread that needle.
So we are gonna leave it at that for a variety of reasons. One, because I don't want
What a
HR
note
down
to
my
end
back.
on. We'll try to make the wizard better.
Yeah. But this will not be the last time you hear us talk about Wizard or classes. I'm going to try to be a bit more transparent about like what our timeline is, but it is also hard to gauge. But hopefully this was a good introductory conversation. I know some of you were left a little bit missing some stuff. But yes, I do have children knocking at my door because my daughter is an extrovert and has friends. I don't understand that concept, but apparently, people like her. But yes, thank you everybody for tuning in. Robert, I know HR is going to need you for some interview wrap-up stuff in a little bit,
Yep.
and I don't want their
Gotta go.
wrath. But thank you everybody. I will be doing giveaways next week because I will have a stream on Friday for the anniversary. Lots of giveaways. It'll just be me, no guest, so you'll have to put up with me. But thank you everybody for your patience. It's a lot to absorb, a lot of knowledge, but I still want to give you spreadsheets in the future, so it's going to get more granular. But thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day and stay safe as always. Take care. Bye, all.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.